Are you building a consultancy or are you building a product? And I think it's very important that you ask yourself that quite frequently, because
what were companies like DeepMind or others trying to achieve with AI supervision?
For decades, we've used the internet the exact same way, through a layer that's today so common it's almost invisible. The browser, Chrome, Safari, Microsoft Edge. Open the browser and you're clicking, scrolling, switching tabs. The browser was designed for us as humans. It's our gateway into the internet. But today, we're entering a whole new era, one where we don't just use software and use the browser. Today, we can hire AI agents that work for us. These agents are able to do all of the repetitive, mundane, and boring stuff that used to eat up hours in our day, and that is a massive shift. Today on Founders and Builders, I'm joined by Joe and David, the founders of Asteroid. Asteroid are building AI-powered browser agents, and they've recently been through Y Combinator and Entrepreneurs First. And in today's episode, you'll learn how you can build your first AI agent and what it really means when the next generation of software isn't something that you click, it's something that you delegate things to.
Being able to say no to customers is really hard because you want to make them happy. But at some point of time, you need to do something that scales. And sometimes that scale means...
I'm Joe, and this is the Founders and Builders podcast. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to hit subscribe down below. And now let's get into it. Why are browser agents such a big deal, and why now?
I think it's three reasons: the size of the market, how big the market is for this, how complicated the solution is, and why now? Because the technology only became basically possible in the past few months. So if you think about the Western civilization, most people are doing their jobs now inside of a browser. Like, you go to work, you open your laptop, and you start moving data around in the browser, just like the same work you're almost doing every day. But it's really hard to automate because sometimes there are a lot of edge cases. It's not really well defined. But like $500 billion economy is just basically like data entry and data retrieval with some edge cases around. So what's the solution around, right? How can we automate it with AI agents? Because the technology became possible in like February. We had computer use agents. Now we have more like browser type of agents who can like look at the screen, click around, and do it. But it's really still not clear how you should do it, how you can learn the information from the people who are doing the work, how reliable you can make it. Because if you want to automate some critical sectors, that's, healthcare, insurance, like you just like, there's no room for error. So that's make it really, really hard. But yeah, the interest here is because technology just became possible, almost, and the market is massive. And there's no clear leader who is just like doing it and working perfectly. So people are begging for this solution.
I love it, Joe. Before you said that the two most impactful but maybe most dangerous places that you can put an AI agent is in a terminal or in a web browser. What did you mean by that?
I think that, the last couple of years have been us using chatbots to spit out text that doesn't impact the world in any way except impacting you and your brain as you read it and maybe as you publish it on the internet. But the web browser and the terminal, possibly other domains, are the interfaces that we as humans use to interact with the world and affect the world. And they're the interfaces that agents will necessarily have to use to impact the world and bend it to their will and change it and shape it. And so we have these latent capabilities that all of the labs are developing or have been pumping hundreds of billions of dollars into. They've been developing the raw intelligence, but the gateway to doing things is the web browser or the terminal or what have you. And so once you start building that bridge, you can unleash some of that latent intelligence into the economy in the way that David described. I think we were at YC the beginning of this year when Compute's preview by OpenAI dropped. I think that was a real kind of wake up moment for David and I. Once we started, seeing agents interacting with the web via vision, natively speaking in the language of clicking and typing rather than having to pass the DOM. That was a big moment for us when we realized like the floodgates were opening.
That's the size of the opportunity, but at the same time, you're kind of the combination of two really risky, pieces of technology, right? You've got LLMs that power these agents. You've also got browsers, which can be inherently stable. How did you land on the idea of bringing those together and starting Asteroid?
We built a lot of AI agents before. I was building startup in fraud AI agent investigation, and Joe was building agents for scam prevention.
Sorry, not agents for scamming people. In fact, agents
clarification.
Agents
just a project on the side.
Agents for combating fraud. We were
I'd like to say that again for the microphone.
agents for combating fraud. What we were doing was, I think, somewhat borderline. We were engaging with scammers using LLMs, early LLMs, and farming their bank details from them by pretending to be victims. But yeah, definitely on the right side of history here.
But we realized there needs to be some kind of supervision mechanisms on normal. Agent was basically sending emails, which is, quite high risk, but not extremely high risk action. But with a browser, as you said, it's really high risk. So we need to put a supervision mechanism, like a human in the loop. So that was the original product of Asteroid, was actually this like human in the loop supervision interface for high risk actions. You ping someone on Slack or email and like, do you want to approve this action? Sending this email. And realize it's super useful for browsers as well. Do you want to send this long form? So a browser agent will fill 20-minute form and then just shows you the last screenshot. Like, do you agree with submitting this information? And that seemed to be useful for like few early customers, but the browser agents didn't work. So it's like supervision on something that doesn't actually work is useless. So we moved towards this, okay, let's just build the agent itself, automate the workflow, and just embed the supervision techniques that we learned from before into Asteroid.
I think there was this, Dave and I both noticed when we were working on our previous agent projects that there's this kind of long tail of work. And so from GPT-2, when I first started sending emails using LLMs, it would get it right sort of 20% of the time. And then GPT-3 rolled around and you're getting closer to like 9s of reliability. But as more models would be released, our system would get better, but the edge cases would get harder to deal with. And there would be, you'd, for example, get further into conversations because the LLM was so good. And so that would unlock new parts of the conversation that you'd never seen before and you hadn't written edge case rules for. So we had conversations that would go on for 1,000 messages over a year. And so then you're dealing with a completely different type of conversation and there are recall problems and context length problems, et cetera, et cetera. So we noticed that there's this like long tail, and it's the same in, I think, white collar work as well. Like as the models get better, you can do more work, but then the things that people are throwing the LMs against are harder, and so you unlock new problems. And so I think one of the core principles that we're operating under is that the work is going to get harder and more interesting, and the value of human collaboration with the agents is going to get more valuable, because if you can sort of collaborate with the agent right at the edge, at the extremities, you can unlock more valuable work, right? And so, like, in our case, we got to the point where the humans were collaborating with the agents by just approving and editing messages, and we had 100% reliability because it was human plus AI, and we were trying to expand the amount of work that the LLM did from 50% all the way to 100%, and then unlocking sort of new work at the end, new emails. And yeah, so one of the founding sort of principles, I think, of Asteroid is how do we bridge that gap at the end with the human review and the collaboration technology that David was talking about. When you're running at scale, especially, it's important.
Yeah, you talked about the collaboration of the human in the loop and the agent. One of the common criticisms, LLMs continue to get is, though they can be so performant and so powerful and they generalize well, they don't really put their hand up and let you know when they're about to make a mistake. It's like that colleague that always has a great answer for everything but doesn't really know. How do you think about solving that problem?
There are a few techniques we have there. Sometimes you run a browser agent and you just don't give it enough data, not enough information. So we need to be very clear in the system prompts and like other instructions to never make up data, always, fail or error or ask a human if you need to. So we give specific tools. And so the agent can just like ask a human if they need any more data. And then we connect it to Webhook or Slack or whatever. And then they ping this information. And then we ask the user to maybe put this edge case into the prompt. And we have actually recently released Asteroid, which is kind of like AI agent builder that can then review the previous executions and have a look at like, oh, there are like few, contradictory statements, for example, in the prompt that maybe you should address, because this will lead into like hallucinations or like the agent not knowing what to do. So it's mostly prompting at the end of the day, but like being very, very smart about
I
it.
think there are other mechanistic or deterministic
Few guardrails.
safeguards
Yeah.
that you can put in place. So, for example, if you're submitting a form that is sensitive, you can not allow the agent to submit it by blocking, like restricting its access to certain tools based on the state of the website. And so if, for example, this element does not exist on the website, it's unable to say that it has completed the form. That takes a little bit longer to set up, but then provides security guarantees. And so it ends up being a kind of trade-off of how long do you want to spend optimizing and building this agent versus, how much do you want it to be right? And that's a trade-off that everybody has to make, because eventually if you're so paranoid that you want to refine every single detail, then the language you should be using is code and not natural language. But natural language is good for encoding ambiguity and leveraging the intelligence of the model to make decisions on your behalf instead of having to have fine-grained instructions for everything. So there's definitely a trade-off between like what kind of use cases are we using this for and what's our acceptable risk level.
And within that kind of open-ended problem of like humans collaborating with agents, what specifically is Asteroid or your new product Astro solving? Is it the evals? Is it the feedback loop? Is it the guardrails? What, if I was a customer or a user of Asteroid, what would I expect?
So you would use Asteroid to build a browser agent for your use case, and then also use Asteroid to monitor that browser agent as it's performing the task. So you would have the browser open, running, and then you could give it feedback at the end, which could go and improve the agent itself. So let's say you are a head of operations at a massive insurance company, and then you're managing hundreds of brokers, and you know that these hundreds of brokers are like just filling this form. So you can just go, open our platform, describe in natural language this use case, like go to this portal, sign in, this is the password, this is the email. We have a credential storage for that. And then you just describe, very complex multi-step workflow, how you need to fill this form. And there's this edge case, all in natural language. Astro, our new AI agent builder, will build a graph, build a prompt, give them the right tools. You just click run. We open a hosted browser, and AI starts interpreting this prompt and instructions. So non-technical builder just build an agent. They run it. It's signed into this platform. It lets you do the quoting. Let's say it was successful. Great. If not, it will tell you why it failed. Like, you forgot to give me date of birth of this person. What am I supposed to do in this case? And you say like, oh, in this case, just ignore this, let's say. And then you can ask Astro, the agent builder, put this back into the prompt. So next time when this happens, you're not going to run into this problem. So yeah, Asteroid is this full stack solution of building and running browser agents.
Okay, super. But this isn't where it started. You guys originally were focused on the supervision layer. After your side projects, you actually met Entrepreneur First. Take us back to that moment. What was top of mind then? And also, how was the experience of going through EF?
Top of mind for me, for sure, was finding the best technical co-founder I could in the world, which I succeeded. I believe so. And find someone who is very much aligned of like the things I want to build in the world, and like how do we want to get there, and someone I can work with like really, really well. Someone who's super driven and is interested in this, new technologies of AI and has background in it and is able to build really, really fast. So that's the main advantage of EF, is finding a co-founder, and that's their unique value proposition. And that's like what you should do if you go there. You should not lower your standards or anything like that. You should have extremely high standards, and they're able to select a unique group of people, which they did. We did a specific cohort called Defensive Acceleration with Matt Clifford, and yeah, it was incredible. 40 people in that cohort, and out of all of them, we started working together. We both had similar experience, similar interests, and yeah. Do you want to add anything, Joe?
Yeah, I think both of us kind of came in with the objective of being a player in the arena in the world of, agents. We kind of know what's coming down the pipeline. It's the unleashing of this intelligence on the world. for better or for worse, who knows how this is going to go. But I think both of us wanted to be involved and understand what's being built. I come from an AI safety background. David came from a fraud investigation sort of startup before, and we had both seen that the agents are going to need this, and this infrastructure, and we're going to have this, and this problem. And so I think originally bonded over discussions of that sort, and worked well together. I think, as David said, definitely the biggest value prop of Entrepreneur First is finding a like-minded and, I guess, stupid enough person to go and want to go and build a company, or to think that they can thinks they can build a company. I know lots of people from school and university, and not many of them wanted to build companies. So the Entrepreneur First giving you sort of 40 people in the same room who have all made that commitment, quit their jobs, and started to it's been quite an incredible feeling.
And I think with EF, what I've heard is you don't even need an idea. You don't need to know your co-founder. It's quite different from, the standard Y Combinator, Techstars. You also went through YC. So after EF, why did you choose to go down the YC path?
So EF and YC are a bit different. As I said, EF is mostly for finding a co-founder. It also helps you accelerate a company, find the idea and build it, but it's kind of like earlier stage investor than the YC. So for us, as we are in EF, our original idea, as we said, was supervision of agents. So our customers were developers, and we wanted to sell to developers and early stage startups. And the unique group of people who are developers and our early stage startups are in YC.
And building agents.
And building agents especially. So YC, for context, have 250 companies being funded every 3 months now. And YC companies prefer to buy from other YC companies. And if you can be close to your customers and you can iterate and you can be in the same room, you just move much faster. So the main downside, obviously, for us was a dilution, because you're taking investments on kind of not bad terms, but very, very early stage terms from two accelerators. But at the same time, you're learning more and more from your customers. And it worked out perfectly for us, because in the first week of YC, we pivoted. Because we realized when we were really close to all these users, all these early customers, that it doesn't make sense to do supervision because no one really needs it, which would probably take us longer to figure out here in London.
EF is almost a perfect segue into YC, because to go into EF, you don't need an idea or a co-founder. And to get into YC, you need both an idea and a co-founder and some traction on it. And EF gives you the perfect opportunity to do that. At the end of the day, you do end up diluting, but the benefit of there are clear benefits of doing both, or doing each accelerator, and I wouldn't trade doing either of them.
If you're good, don't do any, but
yeah, if you're good enough. That's why David's done 3 accelerators.
Exactly, you should not stop accelerating.
Out of interest, what David did the third cohort give you that the first 2 might not have?
For context, I did EF twice and YC once. So the reason I did EF again was, as my previous company, we winded it down and basically decided not to continue with that one. So I was again in the market for a co-founder, and I was chatting to people at EF, and they were starting just this new cohort. So it seemed like a perfect fit to find a co-founder again.
Super quick one from me. Every week we ask our listeners what is one tool or one product they started using that they couldn't live without. And this week, it's CoreWeave. If you're building with AI, you need to check out CoreWeave. They have a GPU cloud infrastructure built just for artificial intelligence. CoreWeave are used by the world's leading AI labs and have recently signed a multi-billion-dollar deal to power OpenAI's training and inference. They're also the only AI cloud awarded platinum by SemiAnalysis across performance, reliability, and scale. And for you building with AI, that means less time fighting infrastructure, more time iterating on your models, and shipping products. So if you want to learn more about CoreWeave, check out the link down in the description below. But for now, let's get back into the episode. Let's go into that kind of idea that you're working on before and why you decided to not continue with it, which was, AI supervision. I think, when we last spoke, you said that you were in talks with companies like DeepMind at the time. Take us into those rooms, take us into that conversation. What were companies like DeepMind or others trying to achieve with AI supervision?
The software that we were selling was, a way for a human or an AI to supervise the outputs of hundreds or thousands of agents in parallel. And we were building this because we thought that agents were going to proliferate, and one of the biggest problems is quality control and checking that things are going well in the agent trace and the work it's doing is good. One of the best ways that I found to do that at my last company was having a human with a specialized interface, spam click, accept, reject, edit on a button. And you could get, a low skilled human could do thousands of those checks a day. And you could go from 90% reliability to 99.99% with a person. That was great. And the other way you do it is with LLMs. You automate the job of the LLM and you take all of the feedback from the human LLM and use it to improve the system. Great. So we saw this coming down the pipeline. We thought, let's build this. Problem is, there were only a few companies in the world at the time that had that problem, and it was the labs. And the big labs were the ones that were deploying LLMs into production or into eval environments. And they were running thousands of them. And the way that they were doing it at the time was relatively low tech. They were sort of monitoring terminal windows, checking what the agent was doing, like going through the terminals and clicking yes, and et cetera, et cetera. And so we had a market of a couple of companies, and some of them had their own in-house solutions. And so the market had reduced again. And so there was a market of 1 or 2 companies for this technology. So we thought, okay, flip the script, let's sell to startups, right? That's why we went to YC. And we realized then that
They were also too early.
just so early, and nobody knows what they're building, and the technology is so fragmented, and the way they've built it is all so different that there is no unified entry point for you to put your technology, and no language you can speak that will resonate with more than a single company at a given time, because everybody was doing things so differently. I think now, with the advent of more standardized language, people are building agents, for example, with the Vercel's AI SDK or Mastro or something like that. You can start to find touch points that will work for thousands of companies rather than just a couple. But back when we were building this, it was very, very difficult. We ended up wrapping the OpenAI client just because there was no framework to integrate into. It was just intercept the raw requests in and out and try to do stuff on top of that, and that was fine. But yeah, long story short, companies are very early, and startups are hard to sell to, I think.
Except when you're doing browser agents, startups really like buying browser.
Well, yeah, I suppose the difference is we were selling originally the supervision layer on top of their system.
You now sell the agents.
Now we sell the agent, and it's a much clearer value prop. You're just solving a concrete problem that they have, because you take the entire work and you take it away from them, and you give them an API endpoint that they hit, and the work gets done, and they don't have to think about it. Whereas previously what we were selling was a layer on top of their system. So not only did they have to go and build an agent to solve the problem, they then had to integrate your technology on top of it. And so your sales cycle is dependent on their engineering team doing vast amounts of exploratory, investigative work to invent and build this agent, which is still just a complete disaster to sell into. And you see an increasing number of LLM observability and supervision and guardrail and eval companies. And it's not to say it's not possible. I'm just saying it's quite hard. But I think maybe getting easier over time.
Yeah, I got 3-4 LinkedIn messages a week asking oh, we're a new company in LLM observability space. We can put guardrails on your agents. I'm like, can you give us advice on that? Don't.
It's tough out there. But there'll be big companies that do it for sure.
It makes sense given where you started, though, and I love the kind of conclusion that we can maybe take from this, which is you may start solving a feature as part of a product that your customer needs to build, but in the end, how a customer thinks about it is they want to buy a product and use it.
Exactly. They want work. They want to do less work. They want to have pain taken away from them. And I think we were probably adding more pain to their lives than we were removing. And now it's the opposite, right? Now we just take concrete sections of their business and we say, we'll automate this and we'll save you X amount of money a year. Or alternatively, we'll 10X your output. And that's a clear value prop. And people speak that language.
In layman's terms, for people that are not used to using AI agents, why is it so hard to put agents into production? I think every company now has their flashy AIs in our product. I mean, I can think of it from CRMs to personal help desks to email clients. And it kind of works some of the time. But you mentioned this earlier, Joe, like the devil is in the details. It's in these edge cases, which you can't possibly predict in advance. Could you take us through like why are AI agents so hard to productionize?
Browser agents they're using LLMs behind the scenes, which is incredible general knowledge. But what they're missing is the implicit knowledge about you, about your process, about your company. And so all this information needs to go into the instructions and context. And people naturally have much higher bar of agents or LLM products working because they're speaking to a chat window, which usually at the other side of the chat window used to be a human. So it's like you would expect something like that. But then maybe the agent is able to do 80% of the work. I want to go fill this form, right? And like the agent starts doing that, and then it gets stuck on what am I supposed to do this? Like there's not asterisks on this one, so it's not required. It's an optional field, but you didn't give me these details. But maybe you expect actually the LLM to infer that this detail from the other information. So it doesn't know what to do. And it might ask you, but it might not ask you. So let's say the LLM will not ask you. So it will submit the form on your behalf and it missed this parameter. The person is getting to get pissed, right? It's like, oh my God, you didn't do this. It's obvious you should do this. It's not obvious, right? Like we have customers who then complain. It's like, why did your agent do this? Like that's wrong. And then I read the prompt. It's like, well, you kind of like didn't tell the agent what it is supposed to do. So it's, I don't want to say it's,
We sometimes forget how explicit we need to be.
we need to, exactly. Like sometimes you just need to be explicit. But sometimes the agents also take their own initiative, right? And even you being explicit, it will just do something else. So people need to learn how to properly like give these instructions, these prompts. And us as a company who's providing this intelligence on there, you need to be able to set proper guardrails against that. So that's why it's
I
hard
think
and unreliable.
that, yeah, as well, when you onboard a human to do some repetitive browser task, you give them training on the first day. You spend 48 hours or whatever supervising them. And then over the course of the next 6 months, they ask you questions on Slack and you reply. And they build up this world model of the workflow in their head where they've encoded all of the relevant information. And it will be very rare that they run into an edge case. And they can also, infer things based on the things they've been given. Whereas when people build agents with Asteroid, they will try and one-shot it in a single prompt. On the first day, in the first 20 minutes, they'll write down or upload a PDF. And then we'll build an agent, and the agent doesn't get the benefit of that next 6 weeks of training or onboarding. It's just expected to do things in the first instance. So what we found is that if you iterate and observe failures and improve the prompt over time, you start to encode the full workflow in this kind of English language description. And the agent reliability gets incredibly high. We have some agents running thousands of executions a day that our customers and us never think about because they've encoded all of the relevant knowledge and it's just there and the agent knows how to do the workflow. But on that first try, reliability is hard because you haven't actually specified what the task is. I'd also add to your question, like there's a whole nother technical side about why agents are hard. So this is kind of encoding the knowledge of the task. It's more of a human problem. And then there's the technical side, which I won't maybe not go into too many details, but I think that the summary is that because we're so early in the building of agents, there are very few worn out paths that well trodden paths, right? And so you're kind of winging it and making things and inventing technologies and building things on the fly. It's almost like you're building the bridge as you're running along it, type of thing.
Totally.
And so that brings technical problems. And it's not to say they're not solvable. They are all solvable. It's just when you're sort of on the frontier of a domain, you end up having to pull things together and invent things, and you might make a wrong turn, what have you.
Who are the people, other than the big AI labs that we're all aware of, OpenAI, Anthropic, Cohere, and such, Mistral, here in Europe? Who are the people that, if you wanted to get to the bleeding edge of AI and AI agents at the moment, you would recommend people listen to? Any blogs, any people building companies? Who do you look at and go, if I want to get to the edge of this subject, here's who I would read from?
I think the most advanced agents are code writing agents. So I would go and look into companies like Cursor. Ideally, yeah, like those who have the highest usage. I would not trust any company who actually is saying things, but you can't test the product or you haven't seen good results. I think that's just smoke and mirrors. So Cursor is the first.
They
that
have
comes to
a
my
great
mind.
technical blog, Cursor, and
Cursor
companies
is-
like that have good technical blogs. I think
Lovable might be quite good as well. It has a high usage.
Manus has a great technical blog,
Yeah.
and I think like the code agents
Code agents are just like the best.
on a more general level. If I want to know what's happening in AI and I want to stay up to date, the Don't Worry About the Vase by Zwei Moshvitz.
Okay.
It's called Don't Worry About the Vase. This is this awesome, well-written analysis of everything important that happened in AI this week. And yeah, if you read that every week, you'll kind of know what's going on, and it points you off in the direction of this, and this release by, Claude has had a new release, and here are the results, and here's a technical blog by this company. So yeah, I'd say to summarize, code writing companies, the frontier labs, read Don't Worry About the Vase, and from there you can figure it out.
Yeah, I said sometimes because you read releases like Gemini 3, which is like, playing the benchmarks a bit. So it's like some independent evaluators on the side is always interesting to have a look at.
Yeah, explain for those that are not familiar, what does it mean playing the benchmarks? Just like these kind of standardized tests that a model could overfit to it, essentially?
I mean, you describe it yourself, right? There are public benchmarks that are on the internet, and most likely it could be, by the way, by mistake. That just like, the training data of these new models are being polluted by actually the answers to these questions that are then being evaluated on. So you get really high results, state-of-the-art results when the new model is released. They test it on, the semi-public testing data set, and it has really, really good results. But then you test it in practice. Let's say you have your own eval set. For example, at Asteroid, we have our own little eval data sets that we can test models on how they're performing on the browser tasks, and we don't see increase in performance in a particular model. Then you stop trusting these benchmarks, and we need to come up.
I think the problem is
better
the
vendor
benchmarks are
saturated.
fundamentally flawed in that you're testing agents like you would test a person at school on an exam, and then the exam results get leaked and it absorbs the information. The problem is the style of benchmarks. I think that we're going to increasingly see more ELO-based benchmarks. ELO being, in chess, the ranking system is ELO-based. If you have an ELO of 2700 and I have a ELO of 2600, but I beat you, then we sort of trade points type thing. And so it's uncapped, and there is no upper bound. It's just you're ranking in relation to other people, and so there is no 100% score. It's an unlimited game that you can play, and we're starting to see these. For example, Anden Labs is now, their vending bench 2 is now featured in there. I think every major model card, and the eval is effectively how much can the LLM generate in profit running a vending machine business over some period of time, and it's in their own environment, and companies test their agents against this problem, and you'll start to see more benches which are like run a company for 2 months, how much money do you make, or play chess and see what elo you get to, etc., etc. All of these like uncapped benchmarks.
Replace a CTO, give an LM.
Like if you replace the CTO, how does the
like how much PRs can you merge, how much the product improves.
So things like LLM Arena are good examples of this, because they're not absolute scores, but they're kind of ELO based scores. They play LLMs off against each other, and they don't tell you which LLM is which, and then they make you vote on the best answer and that kind of thing, and then you end up pairwise comparing all of the LLMs and finding the best one. And so the problem, I think, is fundamentally the evals and the eval design. And my bet for you is that in a year or 2 years, pretty much all of the evals will be these open-ended ELO evals.
Let's change it up and jump into how you thought about building the business, right? So we've just discussed EF and, and the accelerator journey, and also a little bit about the fundraise. Let's go into like the big learnings and the big focus for the coming year. So looking back over the last year building Asteroid, if you could sit down with each other and have a conversation, what would you tell yourself?
2 things that kill companies. It's co-founder conflict. It's like 60% of companies. like we hated each other when we started building the company, so it can't get any worse, and so that's a good strategy. And then the second thing is just giving up. Like people just burn out. So we have a motto at the company. It's just if you burn out, just work harder. Just keep working. Like,
Yeah.
that's a joke. We don't actually. I mean, we do
Do
say
you have
that.
a HR team?
No. We have Claude.
Oh.
We have, and then we piped it. Yeah. So having a good relationship and maintaining a good relationship with your co-founder is incredibly important. And watching burnout and trying to it's just if you survive, you will outcompete 90% of companies. And so paying attention to how you're doing and how the company's doing and how your teammates doing, I think is important.
Running the marathon, not
Running the
sprint.
marathon.
That's the word I'm looking for.
And
yeah.
Also just trusting your instinct, like just continue making decisions.
Mhm.
They'll never be perfect decisions, but it's about the speed and number of decisions that you make every day with training your gut, and next day you're going to make a better one and better one, compared to just, what you read on Twitter or like what your advisor tells you. Just speak to your customers as much as possible, like listen more to them than what you read on the internet, and just continue pushing on that. And the problems that you thought 2 months ago are problems are actually not problems, and every day there is going to be a different problem. And
it's like shocking how much of the publicly available YC advice is just so accurate. There's like a list of 20 pieces of YC advice, and if you ever have a problem, you scan the list and you just do what it says, and like you'll get quite a long way. So yeah, I think there's like some real value to be had there. For example, like listen to your customers. Are you building something that people want?
Find your 10 first super fans rather than a market.
Exactly. Better to have 10 customers that love you than 1,000 that don't care about you, etc., etc., etc. And so
Which was the biggest of those that you think you missed? Like, textbook startup advice that you've gone, oh, wait, YC was right.
I think at one point of time, it was very, very early. We worried too much about competition. We were like discussing like OpenAI might kill us, blah, blah, blah. And we spoke to our YC partner, and I think there was such a great sentence, was like, OpenAI might not have a moat. You don't fucking worry about a moat. You find exactly those 10 first users who just love what you're doing. And in a year, that's not what he said, but basically like then in a year, we'll be so different to what you're doing right now. So it doesn't matter. And there was around the time when OpenAI released Operator. I don't know if you remember that. It was like their computer use agent, extremely horizontal, like a lot of hype. People are starting using it. Oh my God, this is going to revolutionize the world. It was also like 1 month before our fundraising. So
The demos were really slick.
and the demos are really cool, right? And then it's like, oh yeah, this is exactly what you guys doing in Asteroid, right? Like, have you tried, giving up now? You're dead. And it's like, I don't think we're dead. Like, I don't have a good answer what's going to happen, but I don't think we are. Something is going to happen. And 5 months later, OpenAI discontinued Operator. Operator is not a product anymore. They put it inside of, ChatGPT agent is the least used functionality of the agent because it's so slow that no one can really use it. We've been growing ever since quite really like well, and the product doesn't exist anymore. So it's like, we don't care about competition at all. We're trying to solve a problem that our customers are telling us about. They like it.
most companies die by suicide, not by homicide. That's the YC from that list of YC advice. It's in there. So that's definitely one to not worry about too much. Outside of that, I think one thing that I think about a lot recently, and I don't think it would have benefited us much because like I don't think it's like got to the point where it's a problem, but there is this concept of like, are you building a consultancy or are you building a product? And I think it's very important that you ask yourself that quite frequently, because especially in the early days, before you have inbound of customers coming to you, when you speak to a customer and they want something, you're inclined to build it for them and customize your, fork your repo and have some custom logic here for this customer and do this other thing for this other customer. And that can get quite dangerous. And if you end up having to, the downsides are, there are many, many downsides. Like, for example, updates to one part of the system or the work that you do for one customer don't translate well to other customers. You end up with competing priorities and being split brain problems and things like that. And so one thing that I ask myself a lot is, are we a consultancy or are we building a product? And I'm proud to say and happy to say that we're still building a product where the same product can service many millions of people. But yeah, this is definitely something to watch out for.
I think what Joe is also getting at is being able to say no to customers is really hard because you want to make them happy. And there's the standard advice, make your customers happy, do things that don't scale. But at some point of time, you need to do something that scales. And sometimes that scale means you need to say no to some specific features, specific requests. But being able to navigate the maze, like the customer qualification, like this one actually matters, this one doesn't. I can say no to this, but be very transparent about it. This is not going to be in our roadmap type of thing. But then you might lose the customer, but you might hope that you get 5 other customers in a different bucket.
Most customers are pretty understanding. You're like,
Yeah.
in the early days, we'd be like, it's on our roadmap, and then we would put it on the roadmap and then build it. And a lot of the time now, we kind of push back more and say, unfortunately, there is no plan to integrate this functionality. And they're like, okay, that's perfectly reasonable. And so, yeah, being able to but that requires that you have a concrete vision of where it is that your company is going. And if you don't have that, you're lost, because you'll, not lost, because sometimes the customers could pull you in a unified direction and they can kind of tell you what to build. But sometimes you have 2 customers that pull you in completely the wrong direction. And if you don't know which way you want to go, it's going to be hard to choose.
How do you avoid, falling into the trap of just solving the problems your customers are asking you for, right? Building the faster horse versus the asteroid that you set out to build.
It's so hard. David could probably answer this better than I can, but yeah, it's such a hard problem.
It's all like in these two, if you need to make a choice, build the thing that customers want compared to your wrong vision. So if we would not listen to customers, right, we would be building a supervision interface for human agents and no one would care, but maybe you would be happy about building it. But yeah, like you should build what, you're seeing as a problem, but like articulate your vision, also like put ability. You can't A/B test everything. You can't ask your customers to do like, do you prefer this? Do you prefer this? You need to like A/B test the things that like you don't know about, but also then build the things that you have a strong belief that this is going to be solving the problem and articulating like your vision that you think the browser agents should be supervised in this way and they should be trained this way. And then you don't know how the UX should look like. So you try a few things and then you see, oh yeah, the customers clearly are different to us, so they prefer this kind of interface and maybe I would like. And then you listen to them and you do it as they like it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Best way to build a product that no one likes is to ask everyone what they want, right? But I feel like this is more of an art than a science, as far as I've been able to figure out so far.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to switch it up, Joe. Before, you've mentioned a topic that you'd love to discuss on the pod is like what happens when agents are everywhere, right? And you talked about this kind of like middling out of the workforce, that you'll have the kind of abundant, let's say low-skilled labor, and then you'll have this kind of like subset of people that are highly trained doing tasks that agents can't. What's your take on that? How have you thought through this?
I thought about this a lot in a university. I was thinking about the implications of AGI on the labor force, on human work. If we kind of extrapolate out from GPT-2 and GPT-3 onwards, there are concerning implications, I think, for non-machine intelligence, for humans. And so my theory, I guess, was that if the machines come for the kind of white collar work, then and automate large amounts of that, then the human job can't become sort of doing the things that the machines can't. And that at the moment seems to be the work that's a layer of abstraction above the work that the models are doing. So for example, in programming, the models can now program very well. So your job becomes software architecture, which is historically a harder job than being an entry-level engineer. You'd usually have sort of more of a senior developer or a software technical architect sat above a team of lower-level engineers orchestrating them. So now the entry-level job is the software architect job. And I think the same applies for other types of work. Instead of being on the call speaking to the customer, you are supervising 200 phone support bots and trying to find edge cases. It's a layer of abstraction kind of on top of the actual work. And so I see people moving up the ladder slowly. The problem there is that, what if you can't move up the ladder? What if you can't, improve?
Yeah, I think like what will most likely happen as the intelligence will become more abundant is that the capabilities will become more and more abundant, but it will also increase inequality. So like everyone will be better off, but some people who can leverage these AGI machines will just be more and more better off. So that will just increase.
I suppose that's the sort of
Awesome.
the standard implication of capitalism, but just on steroids.
On steroids.
And then, but even if everybody's better off, more inequality usually leads to, I think, societal problems. And so there's that to think about. And yeah, if you've taken out the kind of middle of the ladder in terms of the career progression, then it reduces mobility. And so people can't get a better job than their parents and climb the ladder step by step because the whole middle of the ladder has been hollowed out. And I don't know what to make of that problem or how we get around it. It's a tough one, and I think that it will be one of the sort of defining problems of our time to figure out what to do about that.
I would almost say that I think AI will increase the mobility. I think right now you can only grow almost like one or two kind of categories of like you're super poor, you might make it too poor and middle class. But I think if AI is like individual can have more power to their will, they might be able to skip more and like maybe.
I think it's a force multiplier, right? If you
It's
can wield the tool effectively, then you can amplify your impact on the world.
Yeah.
I guess then so can everybody else, right? So yeah, it's like unclear, but I think there are many big problems coming down the pipeline that we will have the duty to solve and to think about.
What are the big opportunities with AI that not enough people are talking about or aware of right now that you guys see?
My take on this is that I think Claude Code is effectively AGI, your little mini personal AGI, and it can do, I think, most things that you can do with some guidance. And so I'd say we're underutilizing them. I mean, these things got so good within the last 6 months, you can't expect everybody to have entirely, rendered their life in markdown files and have Claude Code hacking on it, hooked up to MCP tools. Like, people take a while to adjust, but if you are a fast mover, you have the power of quite an advanced general intelligence on your computer that can do quite a lot of things. It can be hooked up to pretty much everything that's important in your digital life, and it can do quite incredible things. It's definitely something I don't utilize enough outside of work. But yeah, it's like you start to realize that you can hook up linear bot to your Slack, and it can make issues about conversations that you're having in your Slack, and then it goes to linear, and you can just automatically assign it to Cursor, and then Cursor solves the problem, opens a PR against your repository, and you have a whole bunch of CI checks, and then you have Claude Code reviews the code, and you maybe have a human scan it, and then you can merge, and suddenly all of the small sort of 1.2 point tickets that used to fill the life of engineers are now just auto solved, right? And it leaves the engineers to do the larger problems. And so that's insane. Just by hooking up a couple of automations, you can now automate all of like intern level engineering. So yeah, my take is that we have quite advanced intelligence available to us, and if you know how to use it, you can do quite powerful things.
Final question from me. If we could fast forward, let's say 40 years, and us three are sat next to each other out under the kind of London night sky, and I turn to you both and I say, David, Joe, what was it all for?
Shareholder value.
Yeah, maximizing shareholder
Maximizing shareholder
I love
value.
this meme.
Maximizing shareholder value. When I'm the shareholder and my family are the shareholders. So
do it for Reid Hoffman. I need to increase his net worth. He's worth.
Reid is he's the man. Yeah, I think it's about making impact and like helping people to be themselves and just be able to do their jobs more effectively and have more free time. And same for myself, right? Like I want to just build a really, really interesting technology and impact people's lives and then be able to, yeah, like do things I'd like to do as well in 40 years.
Awesome.
I think that work is increasingly less meaningful to a lot of people. The rise of automation has obviously been a blessing in many ways, but there is a lot of work that many people that nobody wants to be doing. And I hope we can use the machines to do the machine work. Hopefully the machines don't mind and they don't get intelligent enough to, you know, start asking why they have to do all the boring work. But like, if we keep them roughly where they are, then you have to cut that out because they're gonna in 30 years when they're.
I was going to say, you sound skeptical.
No, like, well, yeah, no, I fully am, and like this transcript's gonna get me get me it's gonna get me whacked by the machine intelligence. But no, if we can use machines to do
For the
machine
future
work,
AI overlords.
for the future AI overlords,
We come in peace.
We come in peace.
ingesting this in their training pass, I mean you no harm. So we can use machines to do machine work and unlock vast amounts of productivity for people and for companies, like the healthcare companies that we work for that are churning through the backlogs of forms and things that they have to fill in using Asteroid. And those people can go and focus their resources on patient care or on doing the creative side of their job rather than mashing the same form or the same drudgery hundreds of times a day. And so for me, I think there is value in unlocking productivity and the giving people the opportunity to do the work that excites them.
David, Joe, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great.